The topic that I chose for tonight is something that, I know from talking to many people over the years, becomes kind of a sticking point sometimes for people, or a point of confusion. And also, I can remember, especially earlier in my time of my healing, of learning about healing and kind of getting onto the healing and the spiritual path, was something that I also really struggled with a lot. And so, one of the things that can happen in the healing process or navigating the spiritual path, and actually oftentimes is one of the things that actually brings people onto the spiritual path, is having experiences of recurring patterns of, all sorts of kinds of patterns, but it could be, recurring kinds of energies of, just emotional pain, just different forms of emotional struggle or pain that we don't quite understand what's happening. But it can also be repeating experiences in relationships of, being in relationship patterns where there's conflict or where there's withdrawal, there's discomfort, maybe all in one relationship or maybe over multiple relationships where it kind of continues to show itself back up. And then also maybe starting to recognize on some level recurring behaviors or thoughts that we have that don't really support our higher happiness or our higher potential on many different levels. And so those recurring patterns oftentimes will become really frustrating for people, especially if they have already started to try to do healing work. They will get frustrated because the patterns come back. And, they even kind of think like, "Oh, I thought I already dealt with this. Like, why am I experiencing this again? Like, what am I missing? Like, did my healing thing not work? Like what's actually happening here?" And so it took me a while to really gain a few different perspectives on what was happening and how all this works to be able to better understand it. And so, one of the things that happens as we do that is, at least I can remember doing this, and maybe you have or haven't had these experiences yourself, but we go and of course try to find something that's going to help us. We start learning different healing techniques, and we start, maybe, I know I did a lot of really intense healing kind of work, just, in a lot of ways in my own mindset of just thinking like, I want this to go away. Like whatever I'm experiencing, I just want it to end. And that I felt like something was wrong with me. And so there was this part of me that was actually motivated back in the day of like, I'm trying to fix myself. Like something's wrong with me. I'm trying to fix myself. Like I keep doing these bad things. I'm having these experiences of pain. So thinking that something is wrong with us, wondering why we can't just do it differently or react differently. Why can't we just sort of change and not do the thing that's causing our problem anymore? Why can't we just stop having the conflicts? Why can't we just stop hurting? Why can't we stop struggling in some sort of way around whatever it may be? And oftentimes in this process, we come to blame ourselves or others. We're sort of looking at either something that's wrong with us that we imagine that's causing this problem, or maybe we sometimes also think it's other people. If they wouldn't be such a jerk, we wouldn't have these conflicts. And of course, there can be some truth to that, by the way, but we still want to look at kind of the deeper part of it too. And so, especially sometimes if we've been coming from, some of the ideas around like law of attraction, for instance, there can even be this inner kind of conversation of sort of beating ourselves up and thinking like, why do I keep attracting this experience? Thinking somehow that it's my fault because, I'm creating my experience and maybe I just haven't learned the lesson yet. And what am I missing? And so there's something wrong with me for not getting the lesson, or something wrong with me for continuing to attract the experience. And so we wonder if the healing practices that we're doing are even working. And sometimes, of course, we also might project our problems as being the faults of other people, that the behavior of the way that we've been treated in the past or the present, maybe from family, from friends, past experiences, that those are the problems, that those are the cause, and we might be mad at our parents or, whatever may happen. And of course, I'm not saying that everybody is going to have everything I'm talking about, but I'm giving some examples of the kinds of things that I know that I've been through and that I've observed some of my students and clients having gone through as well. And so in various ways, we just tend to struggle with and think of the painful experiences, the thoughts and the behaviors as wrong. And understandably, we want to get out of the pain. We want to try to shift what's happening, but it starts to feel like kind of a vicious cycle of feeling like maybe we've made some space and then the pattern comes back in some way, or we keep trying to do something to change it, but it doesn't quite resolve. And it becomes kind of confusing. And so, part of the solution of this is just to start thinking about, how do we actually address this and navigate this in an effective way? What is the mindset shift or the technique shift, or whatever we may frame it as, that needs to happen for us to understand and kind of find peace with that experience that's happening, and ultimately begin to move away from it and turn it into a different experience. And so there are a couple of little things that we can do that make big differences. So one is to view the experience from a higher perspective. There is a saying, a quote, and I can't remember exactly who it comes from, to be honest. I'm really good at remembering things, but not necessarily remembering where I learned it from. And it's probably from somebody famous. I think it's, Einstein or Buddha or somebody. But the general idea of it, in my paraphrase, is this understanding that you can't solve a problem from the level of mind that is creating the problem. And so when you're stuck in the experience of feeling the cycle of pain, of feeling frustrated, and you're trying to solve it within the experience of being frustrated and thinking something's wrong with me, et cetera, you can't find a solution, because all the thoughts that are going to come up in that space are going to reiterate the problem that you believe yourself to have. And so we need to be able to find a different perspective and kind of step out of the experience that we're having, so that we can see it from a higher perspective, sort of a helicopter perspective, or bigger picture view. And in order to do this, we also need to shift our understanding of how healing and transformation actually occur. And in this particular case, to shift to address the true cause of the recurring patterns. So the true cause of the occurring pattern is not because we're doing something wrong, because something's wrong with us, because other people are doing things to us, et cetera, et cetera. The true cause, when we start to understand it in the yogic way of looking at things, is the underlying karmic patterns, or the karmic conditioning, that are operating within our mind and in our subconscious and our nervous system. And so, just as a deep tree has roots that hold it firmly in place, our karmic patterns also have deep roots in our subconscious mind that keep them firmly in place. And just as a tree grows and changes over time, our karmic patterns also grow and change as we become more aware of them and release them layer by layer. So in the beginning, our karmic tree is a wild mess with entangled vines and hidden layers and a multitude of patterns and experiences that remain unconscious. But as we start to do the purification work and sort of metaphorically begin to prune that tree of our karmic patterns, it starts to open up more space, more freedom, and allows and creates the ability for our tree, for ultimately ourself, to begin to thrive and to experience its fuller potential.